NBA awards. Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, Most Improved Player, Sixth Man, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, Clutch Player of the Year, Executive of the Year. We will be giving you our official picks for who we think should deserve it. These are our picks. So we're going to agree in some places, I'm pretty sure, but we're also going to probably disagree in a lot of places. Are you ready, Derek?
Absolutely, man. Let's get started.
All right. So our first category, Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year is Victor Wembanyama. I understand the people who had Chet early in the year. Again, he's had a very productive season. He was very efficient for Oklahoma City. He's added a lot of things to that team that most other players couldn't add. And they're the 1 seed largely because of the impact that Chet has provided with Jalen Williams and Shea down the stretch to close out ball games. Much respect. But what Victor has done in his rookie season, this is an all-time season. And for me personally, I did not see LeBron's rookie year growing up. I didn't. So for me, this Wemby season has been by far the best rookie year that I've personally witnessed almost every game with my full eyes on. And trust me, I say this because I literally watched him play with Jeremy Sohan, and it was rough. It was right there. It was extremely rough to watch, but the defense is generational. We're talking about a guy that is leading the league in blocks per game, and down the stretch in the last month of the season, he was averaging 5.6 blocks per game. That's what Victor was doing. A triple double with 10 blocks, 5x5 games. I mean, he's really done it all, and he's gotten better. And the biggest thing that to me makes it wild, and in my opinion, this is the reason why he should be unanimous. Like every vote should go to Wemby, is every month of the season he's gotten better, but he's doing all of this on a minutes restriction. We're talking about a guy that's averaging like 20 to 21 points per game, 12 rebounds, more than 5 stocks combined. And he's also shooting pretty efficiently from the field considering what normal rookies do. Also, the fact that he's still shooting better on his self-created threes compared to catch and shoot is wild, but that has been the Victor Wembanyama experience. But yeah, for me, that is my rookie of the year. My second candidate is Chet, and my third one would be Brandon Miller, who, by the way, has been playing very good basketball in Charlotte. I was one of the people saying that I thought that Scoot should have been drafted over him. Brandon Miller has shown the world that he can really be a very dynamic player, more dynamic than what I was giving him credit for. I think he's thoroughly outplayed Scoot in his first year, but Scoot, to me, still has the potential, especially with how Scoot ended out the season, to still be the better prospect. But what a great year for Brandon Miller. I wanted to give that credit, so he's my third pick. Those are my 3 picks in the Rookie of the Year conversation. Derek, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we agree so much on not only our list, but yeah, the analysis you made of Wemby. I've got the same 3, the same order. There was, of course, a time when Chet was in the lead for Rookie of the Year. To me, though, I knew that was only a matter of time. And you mentioned the minutes restriction. You mentioned the Sohan experience. Really just the Spurs experience. I think the first good 20 games, I look at that Spurs team and I wonder how they're not under investigation for tanking, because Popovich making some of the wildest decisions I've ever seen from his illustrious tenure. I mean, there was a time we were saying, do the Spurs actually hate Victor because they refuse to pass him the ball? The fact that we have a rookie who is not only first option material in his first season in a minutes restriction, but is also just the easiest play on the floor at all times, kind of regardless of opponent, that's beyond rare. That's just wholly unique. You probably have to go back to like rookie Kareem, in all honesty. And I think he's deservingly getting comps to that player, one of the players of the best players of all time, someone who's actually in the GOAT conversation. Yeah, Wemby was sensational for all the reasons you said. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing short of historic. I mean, he's in consideration for not only Rookie of the Year, which I think he's just, I agree, it's just unanimous. It shouldn't be any other kind of discussion. But he's in All-NBA conversations. He's in But I mean, if he played more, would have been all-star conversations. But more importantly, he's in DPOY conversations, and we're going to get to that.
Wild to be in as a rookie in this era of basketball, a very talented era of players, and you're in those conversations.
Right. He's special. There's nothing else. And so I say all that to follow up with, I almost feel bad for Chet, because in most other seasons, not only is he rookie of the year, he would just be getting far more love and attention. I mean, 16, 8, and 2.5, there's peak stats for him. And he was not only a huge improvement, obviously being a big body for OKC that doesn't have a lot of size, but he was the glue guy to me in most respects. Obviously, SGA played an MVP caliber level all year. We saw the jump with J-Dub, a pillar of consistency himself. But to me, it's Chet who makes every single lineup work that he's in, who's a defensive anchor, again, as a rookie, a guy who we commented on his frame being more of a concern than Wemby, who was 19 and even lankier, even taller than Chet. And to me, I think Chet answered every question so easily and so quickly, and now they're a first seed. So it's a really tough situation. If it wasn't for Wemby being truly the definition of a generational talent, Chet would probably be in first place for this award. Amazing season from him. And then you mentioned Brandon Miller, who I was also a doubter of as far as being drafted by Charlotte and going as early as he did. Second half of his year, he was one of the lone bright spots for that franchise and looked good. I mean, he just looked like an NBA wing. I really think on both ends of the floor, we knew he was a pretty polished offensive player, but defensively, with a very poor cast around him, he hustled, he cared, and that's all you can really ask for out of Charlotte at the moment. I think they have a good one there. So hopefully with a healthy team, a healthy LaMelo next season, they could form a pretty impactful duo. Charlotte needs a lot of help, but I think they've got at least one piece they can count on in Brandon Miller.
Yeah. Well, happy that we agree with that list. Again, big shout out to those players. Couple quick honorable mentions. We don't have to do this for every category, but Jaime Jaquez was certainly on this list, but at a certain point, sure, Brandon Miller eclipsed his productivity. I would like to think that B-Pods might have been in these top 5 conversations until he turned into Ben Simmons late down the stretch, but we won't speak on that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I fully agree. And look, I'll just say this, not that he was in the running for it this year, but I think Scoot showed some promise down the stretch. 100%. So again, not in the combo, but for a top draft pick, I think he still can carve out a good NBA career.
100%. Well, that takes us to our next category, ladies and gentlemen, Coach of the Year. Now, this is an award that changes criteria a lot of years. I've seen it be sometimes where a coach didn't get it in another season, so they give it to him the next season when he might not be as impactful as a coach. For me personally, what I look at in Coach of the Year is how good of a coach are you regularly? Was your team able to outperform expectations? Which most of the time, if a team outperforms expectations, more than likely that coach will be in those conversations. How you're enhancing players, how you're maximizing players, and how you're floor raising your unit considering the roster and talent that you're given. For me this year, my Coach of the Year has to be Mark. I forgot to say his last name.
Daigneault.
Thank you. Mark Daigneault for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think he's been a terrific coach. I thought last year he was, for that OKC team to be a top 15 defense without a true big. They plug in Chet and they've been top 5 in offense and defense all season long. He keeps them competitive. I think he has a lot of great scheming. His ATOs are pretty terrific as well. And he just understands how to put players in the best position to succeed. So I really feel like he deserves to have his name in that conversation. So I would have him as my Coach of the Year. My next 2 are interesting names. I don't think I've heard this name come up once, but I want to give him credit. My second Coach of the Year will be Mike Malone. And I say this because I notice a lot of times in these Coach of the Year conversations, Mike Malone's name doesn't come up enough. But Denver's been a powerhouse for some years now, and I feel like his coaching in terms of how he controls the game. I've literally witnessed games where Denver can make one simple mistake at the start of the fourth quarter. He's calling a timeout. He's getting in people's face. He's holding the team accountable, and they really right the ship and win games. I think he's really been on his players and trying to also show accountability by, at times benching the veteran players in place of younger players to show them that it's about how we play in our process. And I think he deserves credit to be in that conversation. He's been a phenomenal coach. And also, even though this is regular season, I just say, I know how good of a coach he can be, especially when it comes down to making adjustments in critical must-win games. And I think this year, for them to still be a top 2 seed in the Western Conference is extremely impressive. So I would say Mike Malone would be my second pick. And my third pick, for me, this is a guy that probably won't get as much love, but I just think what he's done this year, especially in terms of evolving his franchise, matters a lot. Jamal Mosley on the Magic has been terrific. I think this Magic team is a team that people thought was a fun little team that was competitive last year, but a lot of people had them as like a 9 or 10 seed. I remember vividly over the summer, me and Derek were having conversations about where the Magic ranked in terms of the Nets or the Hawks, and the Magic have clearly, ascended from those talks, being like pretty much the second best defense the entire year is so impressive. And the effort and commitment to consistency on that end for the entire year, I think Jamal's done a pretty good job, and he's got more to grow, especially considering all of the injuries that the Magic have had to sustain this year as well. Also, the work and the impact that you've seen in players like Jalen Suggs. I just think that the environment he's been able to craft has been terrific. So those are my 3 picks, Derek.
Love the selections. This award, obviously, I've got a little bit more of a personal tie. I take great pride in my coaching and really love the game and how much it's like really brought to me from that end. And it's awesome to watch these guys read and take something from each of them, because there are a lot of great coaches in this league, head coaches, assistants across the board. We definitely agree as far as number 1. I think Mark Daigneault really became the runaway this year, of course, clinching the first seed in the West in an insanely competitive conference all year, with the youngest team, or if not the youngest, one of the youngest teams ever to have the first seed. Yeah. Yes, we know they've got talent. You can't get a first seed without talent, but you mentioned the buy-in, which is something every fan wants their team to have, right? Whatever your identity is, you need some buy-in, but you're getting just a sea of youthful players that buy into the system. I think one of the biggest stats, and you'd mentioned it, is being not only top 5, let alone top 10, let alone top 5 in offense and defensive rating for nearly the entire season. They've held on to that. That's remarkable. We see that they do not have the stereotypical, like, dominant defenders per se. I don't think Chet's he's an anchor, he's a rookie. We recognize he's special, but he's not your prototypical anchor, let alone, again, being so young. SGA led the league in steals this season. He took a jump defensively. He bought in. J-Dub was a Swiss Army knife, we understand. Like, I just think across the board, it was beyond impressive. They were a plus 16 win team last year, from, of course, during their tanking days, and then I think they were plus 17 this season. So the fact that they just took 2 insane leaps from where he started, being a part of the tanking teams not that long ago, I think that's impressive too. Because when you're a team, you're coach of a team that's not very good, right? And you have to still build a culture. You still want to come to work every day. You want to keep guys happy, and you stink. You're like a 20-win team, and you're going to be like that. But then you just are able to take these consecutive leaps and become the best team in the Western Conference. Again, record, but that's just beyond impressive to me. So absolutely shout out Coach Daigneault. He's number 1. I like the Michael Malone mention. I think he is going to end up in a very Eric Spoelstra situation of being an elite coach. Obviously has elite talent around him. That's maybe what's kind of detracting him. But he has accountability and buy-in. They're the defending champions for a reason. Great mention. I just went on the other side and I took Joe Mazzulla. 64-win team in Boston. Yes, we know they have insane talent, but he got them to buy in as well. We understand that Missoula had a different system than Coach Udoka, and he preached far more 5-out offense, maximize spacing. He wants the widest lanes the NBA has ever seen for guys like Brown and Tatum to drive, and he got that on top of being an obviously elite defensive team. And it's not just the 5 starters. Sam Hauser is about to be due for an insane paycheck and pay raise himself. Peyton Pritchard, very talented piece. Just getting the commitment from everybody, getting commitment from bona fide stars like a Jason Tatum, who had success well before Missoula was ever there. I think that means a lot. Missoula himself is not a very old coach. He's a younger guy, so I think that also can be tough to get the respect from players. And I think he's got nothing but his players and his team in Boston. So that's my second pick. Fantastic season. And I'm so happy you said Jamal Mosley, because he's my third. And he was the toughest one to nail down, only because from a record perspective, on top of an incredible job himself, Chris Finch is the other guy I went back and forth, coach for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Incredible season. Obviously, they were in the running for the first seed for a good portion of the season in the West as well. But I ultimately went with Mosley, and identity is the word I came back to. The Magic, like you said, second best defensive team truly all season, without, I think, the true star personnel of a team like Minnesota, of a team like OKC that's got, at least really talented pieces to kind of maximize that defensive impact. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, 2 great young players, but not known as elite defenders. The 2 elite defenders on the team are Jalen Suggs, who not only was incredible defensively this year, but took one of the biggest shooting leaps I've ever seen. Yeah, but I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the NBA has ever seen. He went from a high 20% three-point shooter on slightly below average volume to 40% on, I think, more than 5 a game. That's an insane testament not only to his work ethic, but also coaching staff. They bought into, look, you got to be a good shooter where this team doesn't have a lot of shooting to begin with. You need to do that so we can keep you out there because your defense is so stinking good. So great success there. We know about Jonathan Isaac. It's been said before, and I think it's true. He's probably been the best per minute defender all season.
So wild, man.
Right, like we just hope he can stay healthy moving forward. But Coach Mosley was able to get an identity very quickly. Again, a similar situation to Daigneault, coming into a team that doesn't have a great history of success. Not exactly a lot of deep playoff runs in recent memory. Very, very young team. To get total buy-in, to build this identity, to really build clearly a pretty successful culture with a lot of guys that don't have that secure footing per se, like moving forward. They don't really know what their role is. They're still trying to grow. They're still trying to stand out and succeed, get those big paydays, but he's got them competing. And now that they are a firm playoff team, they're going to get a chance to showcase against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, we both kind of think tanked to get Orlando. And I think they're in for a rude awakening because Coach Mosley and that staff have got them ready to go. I think they're not too shy or too scared of the moment. I think they're going to come out and be terrific. And the Cavs are in for a rude awakening, and people are finally going to see how good the Orlando Magic really are.
Yeah, well said. For those reasons, that's why he was in my top 3 as well. I do want to say shout out to Joe Mazzulla. I mean, the Celtics have been just a phenomenal team, so that's also a great pick as well. Overall, all these coaches in a vacuum really performed at that level to, really deserve the Coach of the Year honor. I think we've had some really good coaching this year, and there's a lot of people that complain about their head coaches year by year by year. So these are some quality coaches in that type of time. But without further ado, it is time for one of the biggest awards on a year-to-year basis, the Most Improved Player of the Year award. All right, man. Okay, so we are here. So I want to start off with this. Most improved player is such a polarizing award because we've seen times where players get most improved, but it's like you were already a very good player that was ascending to that caliber. Should you still get it? Prime example is when Ja Morant won it over his teammate, which clearly deserved it over him. You know, so that was a little off that year, but at least he got it from Ja physically. You know what I'm saying? So that was a thing. I'm gonna give you my picks, man. To me, the runaway candidate for this award, and I know it's been close between these guys, but I do think he's edged him out overall. I gotta say Coby White, and I say Coby White for a plethora of reasons. I mean, going from a single-digit score to averaging 19 is really ridiculous with all of your splits going up in terms of your efficiency and all of that with his passing. All that going up in one season is crazy. But the bigger part is he single-handedly has changed the arc of his career. Coby White, before the season started, was looked at to be a player that would probably be trade filler pretty soon, that wasn't like gonna be in the core future of the Bulls if he had another down season moving forward. He kind of struggled to find his footing in the league. Also on that team, there's just a lot going on where he had Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan over him. But the season he's had this year, I think he's emerged to be the guy that they keep, to where when Zach LaVine was off the floor, they were fine because they had Coby White. Like, that's how good of a player Coby White was this year. And in terms of his like shot profile, down the stretch, he did struggle. So I can get why for some people you might take off points. The reason why I don't is because the floor for what Coby White was, even his worst games this season, like completely clear whatever that player was. So for me, I got Coby White number one, Derek. After that, oh man. After that, I got Tyrese Maxey. And I gotta be honest, I might be hating here. I kind of didn't want to put Tyrese on my most improved list. I think he showed areas where he improved, but there's some other players that I think have also improved. But I still think doing what he did when Joel Embiid didn't take the floor, I think definitely deserves its own credit. I think Maxey is showing that he's really, entering that star criteria where he can truly become one of those guys. I think he's had a crazy, crazy season overall, but I would put Tyrese Maxey in this conversation. The polarizing name for me is really Tyrese Halliburton, because the start to the year that Tyrese had in terms of how effective he was, I mean, he was almost having a 50, 40, 90 season where he's leading the league in assists, averaging 24 points. He's cooled off considerably since the injury, but I still think he deserves a berth in this conversation. But there's two names, and again, I'll leave it alone with this, Derek. There's two names I just want to throw out there because I really like giving role players who have made a shift in their games this. Herb Jones and Jalen Suggs. These two players, in terms of their improvement, because again, I feel like with improvement, people just want to see how you improved in terms of your points per game. But Herb Jones and Jalen Suggs have made dramatic shifts to their game, where Herb Jones was looked at to be a offensive liability. He becomes a 40% shooter this season, and his ball handling has shown dramatic growth to where he's not just some 0 to super negative offensive player. And his defense has also improved. I mean, this guy was guarding multiple positions the entire year for the Pelicans. A big part of why for some reason the Pelicans had a plus defense, even though on paper they had many offensive liabilities on their roster. So I think Herb Jones deserves to get love and credit for that. Jalen Suggs, I mean, you literally just covered it. This was another guy where Orlando's head into the season with the guard jam. They draft Anthony Black. We're not sure what Jalen Suggs is going to be. And he winds up being one of the best defensive players in the league, bar none, and a knockdown shooter, where he was none of those a year ago. So those are all of my picks. I know that's like 5 or 6 players, but I mean, literally, it's been that many players that are getting good. But my definitive pick of number 1 would be Coby White.
Okay. Yeah. No, feel the whole team. No, but it's funny. Coby White is a great pick. Obviously, he's coming off a game of his life. With that play-in game against Atlanta. I'll say this though, and You said it up top. This award is kind of confusing as far as its ever seeming changing criteria. But I had to look back at previous winners, previous nominees, and I kind of just realized, like, look, the last 10, 15 years, this award has gone to guys that are going from good role players and maybe decent starters to all-star caliber, or they just themselves had an all-star season, like guys that are clearly making a jump. And so while Coby White is a fantastic name, one of the few bright spots in a very ugly Chicago season, he was my third guy, because the other two players in front of him, I think, have taken that star leap, and that is a big difference maker. And they're also just on contending teams, and they're a big reason why they're contending teams. So that was kind of my, difference maker. Number 2 is Jalen Williams. We talked about him a little bit earlier with the OKC segment. Chet and Shea may be more important long term, even in right now. Obviously, we know what SGA has been all season. We know Chet, if it wasn't for Wemby, would be walking away with the Rookie of the Year on top of being all defensive caliber himself. But Jalen Williams has entered a conversation, a very unique category of being one of the most usable and flexible players in the entire NBA. And he was already pretty stinking good last year, but he went into most efficient player given the role in the league as well. He was a Swiss Army knife on defense. I am of the opinion he's playing out of position, playing the 4 more often with a smaller OKC team. I think he's a true 3, and I think he'd be fantastic in such a role, but he's just been so good that Coach Dagnall and the rest of that staff feel good playing him where he's at. He can bring up the ball on a consistent basis, be a fantastic offensive initiator, and take any defensive task you ask of him. No complaints in the world. Bonafide pro, now bonafide star. We talked about previously, this might be the last season he's not an all-star. He's really hit that kind of quality. We expect OKC to be around like this for a while. I think people have collectively recognized him, and he's been great. So he was a close second with number 1, and it's the guy you said, Tyrese Maxey. I promise I have done my absolute best to keep bias out of this. Like you said, I'm more prone to give a guy like Coby White, role player to great starter, more love, but I think Maxey, given the way this award has been voted on before and the criteria, I think he's deserving. Going up from 21 points a game to, of course, 26. His first All-Star berth was this season. He's been sensational. We know Embiid's been out for most of the year. He has picked up the slack. 3 50-point games this season, which is, I understand we're in an offensive explosion right now as far as the league, but 50-point games aren't commonplace, let alone multiple. So he's just been so stinking good. He's been a great professional, great pro. Also improved defensively. I'm not going to pretend he's anything like all league or anything like that, but the hustle and commitment have really showed up this year. And that's another reason why they've been able to stay afloat, is he's not, a guy you can just easily pick out and hunt, and try to abuse switches. We know how fast he is, and now it's translating to sliding his feet defensively on top of being a blur offensively. So he's just been so stinking good. And like I said, he's clearly made that star leap. He is getting true all-NBA contention. There's been already more than a few media voters that have him, I saw today, as high as all-NBA second, which I think is insane. That's a huge paycheck leap. I know. Gifted's making a face right now, and I kind of felt the same way when I heard it. I'm not going there, but I do think he deserves a ton of recognition. He's been sensational this year.
Yeah. I can't knock any of those names. Jalen Williams has been so insanely good at basketball. It's crazy because he shows you glimpses of this at the end of last year, and then just followed up with a full season of that. Like he's been crazy. He's been killing it. This award is hard for me to judge sometimes, Derek, because again, as you said, right, like sometimes I might have a bias in terms of, okay, I already think you're that caliber of player. So when you rise to that level, to me, that's just you making a natural growth upon your game. I like to lean towards guys that change the direction of their careers in a way with their play. And I literally think that Kobe White just went from a guy that could be this guy that is a journeyman that gets passed around the league to no, there really might be something for Chicago's young core starting with Kobe White and then Ayo, right? So I mean, that to me is what really gives him that edge. But overall, a lot of players have made huge leaps in the game. And again, I'm a junkie for giving role players that might not take a dramatic like star leap, but just dramatic leaps in their games in terms of what you can rely on. I think that's huge. So that's why I shout out literally a entire starting five on my list. So.
No, totally. Look, we agree on that sentiment. I'll just read out the last 5 winners, and that again kind of influenced my decision to lean to a guy who's kind of taken these star leaps.
Sure.
And again, J-Dub also fits that criteria. Dude had like a nasty 25-5 on a number 1 seed. But last year's winner, Lauri Markkanen.
Yep.
You know, we know how good he's been, of course, an all-star. Ja Morant, all-NBA player. We're hoping for a fully healthy season next year. Yeah. Julius Randle, all-star as well. Year before that, Brandon Ingram, one-time all-star. Pascal Siakam, all-NBA player. So, you know, these are big leaps. These are guys that have made either the all-star, all-NBA, or both, you know, jumps. And I think that's kind of, you know, what we're seeing with the trend. I agree. It feels like it should be more of a role player award. And, you know, again, more shine to a guy that maybe is almost unexpected to be as good as he is. But I kind of just leaned into the history side of things. So don't disagree with any of the guys you shouted out, but I do think a guy like Maxey could win the award this year. One guy I will say that you didn't mention, I'm a little surprised, Jonathan Kuminga. I think, you know, betting odds have him, you know, 3rd or 4th this season. So I'm surprised you didn't give him that shout out.
Yeah, I might be being hard on Kuminga, but I swear I really feel like he's just been this type of player. I've seen a bit of improvements in his game, but to me, the minute situation made it hard to justify giving it to him. And also because I think that he's capable of doing what he's done. He just hasn't gotten the time to do it. I kind of didn't want to throw his name in there with these other guys that where sure. I've seen some guys that literally have done, like, I did not think Kobe White was going to be this good.
That's completely fair.
You know, like I thought he was going to be trade filler, and now he's the guy where it's like the Bulls are not trading him.
Yeah, he might be the one.
That's what I'm saying.
Hopeful piece.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, dude. I gotta say, I'm looking at the next award, and I'm hyped. This might be my favorite award this year.
I'm hyped. Yeah. So moving on to the next award, as Derek said, 6th Man of the Year. Now I'm gonna say this right now. Okay, I'm gonna say this right now. 6th Man of the Year for me for the past couple years has been one of the most annoying awards I've had to do, and the reason why is I feel like every year it's how many points per game off the bench. Okay, you're the highest. Yep. It's you, and like I get that, I do get that, but I kind of wish we gave more love to guys that, you know, filled the role and played a more complete game and also scored. I feel like the impact off the bench should be 6th Man of the Year, not just points per game. And I gotta say this, my top 3, I think there's a clear top 2. For me personally, as good as Malik Monk is, Naz Reid is my 6th Man of the Year. I say this because he's been one of the best bigs in the association. Positionally, he's been a net positive in any lineup that he's pretty much featured in. The 3-point shooting on volume has been spectacular for Naz Reid. But more than anything, at the end of the season, when Karl-Anthony Towns goes down, a lot of people said, is this the end of the Timberwolves? Look at the games they have left. They have a bunch of competition left. He comes in and instantly steps up. Multiple 30-point games, multiple big games against teams like the Lakers, teams like even the Clippers, where they were down by 20 plus some points. Then he comes in the game, shifts everything. They wind up blowing out that same Clippers team, right? We saw him down the stretch really step up without Karl Anthony Towns there. But even when Cat is there, he's just such a glue guy that fits in any lineup. He plays great defense. He's a positive in pretty much every metric that I look at. And I just feel like he deserves some love in this. I feel like Monk definitely is in that conversation as well. I'm gonna get to him, but I got Naz Reid number 1, man.
Yeah, look, I guess spoiler for my list, I also have number 1. I think he narrowly stole it from Malik Monk, who I also have second.
Yeah.
In this running later in the season, of course, Monk went down with an injury, which stinks. But I mean, everything you said is true. I'll go one step further. Not only is Naz Reid so stinking good at every facet seemingly of the game, such a great fill-in for the T-Wolves, I think he's Karl Anthony Towns' replacement. I know I told you that before, but look.
You did, yes.
Look, we know how good Cat is, and this is not really a shot at him. But what I'm saying is, Naz Reid has not shown you the production yet, but I look at his game and I say, what can he not do that Cat can? And we know Cat's one of the most gifted big shooters of all time. Naz Reid is pretty good. Like, he doesn't have a whole lot of fall off. And that's, I think, like kind of the distinction this year with the award is who has been the guy you insert in a starting lineup or, you know, have come off the bench with whomever he's playing with, and you're not seeing any fall off, or you might even see some gain. And I think in many games this year, with Cat being injured, Naz Reid was not even a neutral, was a clear positive for their team.
Yep.
For an offense that has been stagnant at times, that's been, you know, I think over-reliant on Anthony Edwards' hero ball, and sometimes they're looking for an answer. And Naz Reid at multiple times has been that answer. So, I think he's an easy number 1.
Yeah. The thing that made me give him the edge over Monk, which I'll get into, is because Monk's injury down the stretch led to Naz Reid playing a bit more games. I thought it was close, and I also just, you know, think for all of his positives, I think he deserves some love because of that. But make no mistake about it, what Malik Monk has done for the Kings in terms of his playmaking jump has been spectacular for the Kings. I mean, he is the definition of a tough shot assassin. Trust me, I know this. I literally have a game winner etched in my brain this season where the Warriors are up 20-something points for the entire second half. This is an in-season tournament game. And then Monk just comes in and hits the most insane, crazy, acrobatic game winner to pretty much send Golden State home as they lose and cannot convert on the other end. What Monk has done with his shot making, his feel for the game, the way that he fits in perfectly with Fox to where he doesn't take away too much from Fox to get his off-ball ability, and the way that he can manage in the pick and roll with Sabonis as well. Monk's been spectacular. So he should be right up there with Naz Reid. I slightly give him the edge, but again, for me, a lot of it comes down to games played, how he was hurt at the end of the season. But Monk's been spectacular, man, truly.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a guy who steadily improved each season, had a kind of a slow start to his career. I mean, I think I saw everything I need to see to be a believer last year against your Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
When Sabonis was having a horrendous series, and aside from Fox, the Kings were kind of just looking for answers. Monk was the answer. He and Fox, whether Fox was sharing the floor with them or not, Monk was almost a solo act at times. We know, like, obviously good outside shot, like really great creator, but he was making some of the toughest finishes against a stout defense look completely poised, comfortable, no moment was too big. And that, of course, was on a team that hadn't seen the playoffs in, 15 years, 17 years? I forget what the number was.
Very long time.
So he was, a hero in Sacramento fans' eyes. And beyond deserving. And I think that composure carried right on to this season. He looked great. Did everything, that we saw in that series last year continued on. You mentioned the playmaking boost. A guy like Davion Mitchell has been, kind of a struggle as far as his development offensively. And then you got a guy like Monk who's like, okay, look, I get it. Fox needs to breathe and can't do everything here from the guard position. I can carry the weight. And that's what Monk did this season. Yeah, I mean, you said it. Great player. Had the award for most of the season. Unfortunate injury is the reason why Reed got to show off a little bit more. I will say I cheated, and I put 2 more players here. So I have a third and a fourth. And honestly, these 2 guys also had real contention, real striking distance. I could move them up the ladder and not feel that bad about it, because I think they're on 2 contending teams themselves. They have played like starters or have been starters in their careers before, and have just been vital to 2 teams, and funnily enough have kind of been not only contenders but kind of disappointing, and they've been some bright spots for their team. So first and foremost, I'm saying Bobby Portis. We know about the Bucks' struggles this year. Bobby Portis has been, I think, one of the few bright spots, not only in production but keeping a consistent vibe. We know Coach Griffin was dismissed, having 30 wins. Doc Rivers comes in, and it, let's just say, hasn't been pretty. It's been under 500 basketball, and they're a team that is not that far removed from a championship, but somehow seeking an identity. And all I can say is, like, at least they've got Bobby. Like, Milwaukee fans can be happy about that. I'm gonna just say my fourth guy real quick. Again, kind of a team that started off really, really good, had a stretch, probably like 25, 30 games into the season where we were calling them a contender in the West. Now they've got. Wait, what did you say?
May I guess?
Yeah.
Norman Powell.
There you go. Yup. yup. Yeah, when the Clippers' big 3 were rolling, they got, I think, the lion's share of the credit, mostly deservedly so. But Norman Powell has been the definition of a sniper as well as an offensive creator, and it's beyond underrated, his production, because especially as of late, you're pretty much due for a bad game from one of the big 3. It's just kind of been taking turns. Kawhi's knee, of course, is something, especially as of late, is a concern. Norman Powell is normally in closing lineups because there's really seemingly no shot he can't hit, no moment too big. We know he's been on an NBA final stage before. He's been in multiple playoff runs. He's just been really good. He's really good. He would fit with a lot of teams. And, his production's right up there with all the 3 other guys, I've mentioned. So he deserves a shout out. It's been a tough season to crack this award, but he absolutely deserves love.
Yeah. I definitely think those are fair. Again, Six Man of the Year had some really good names beyond just points per game. Like, guys were legitimately adding value to teams in the pursuit of winning all throughout the league. So big shout out to them. Shoot, even the backup big off of the bench, I believe Mo Wagner for the Magic has been huge for them this season off the bench. So I mean, we've seen a lot of great improvements from those guys. I think that's huge. But it's time to move into one of the needle mover awards. Derek, are you ready?
I don't know that you're ready, man, because this is a biggie.
Defensive Player of the Year. Now, I'm going to get my hate off real quick before we get into this award.
Get your hate off real quick. Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Defensive Player of the Year is an award that matters. Should be an award that is focused on the regular season. I grow tired of hearing people bring up playoff success when it comes down to evaluating how a player performed for Defensive Player of the Year for the vacuum of this season. I've heard many people give a lot of slander to Rudy Gobert because he gets played off the floor in the playoffs. But if you actually watch basketball in any semblance, when he's covering so much defensively that he has to make a choice between guarding the paint, which he's literally one of the best in the modern era at, or going to the perimeter when he is on a team full of defensive liabilities, but still making sure they have the top defense in the league, that deserved DPOY. The fact that around this award, I've heard people say, well, Rudy might get 4. Is it fair for him to have 4 in history? It absolutely is. Rudy Gobert has played at a Defensive Player of the Year caliber for the entire season. Minnesota's defense has been dramatically better when he's been on the floor. The advanced metrics support this all the way to a T. And his rim deterrence has just been on another level. The fact that he has guys that can actually play defense just a little bit, at least, compared to what he had in Utah, has been a dramatic shift for him. And I think it's a runaway for him. I mean, he's played the games. He also rebounds the ball. Yes, rebounding is a part of defense. A lot of people just don't really care about securing the value of a rebound, because as good as your defense is, if you don't close out the possession, what does it matter? When Gobert is on the floor, Minnesota has like a 70% chance to actually close out possession when he's there. Like, that matters. So I got Gobert. Now here's my hate. This guy is not going to win DPOI. And I understand why. He's on a bad team. Victor cannot win DPOI because for a lot of people, he's on a bad team. I want to be clear. The Spurs are the all-time worst defense when Wemby is not on the floor. When he is on the floor, they are literally top 10. Last I checked, I think they were 13th because of the whole year campaign. But to be fair, we're talking about a Victor on a minutes restriction, still providing you that much impact. He is leading the league in blocks. Now, where the hate comes in, and I'm pretty sure I will get pushback from Derek, and that's fine. This is a basketball podcast. We can do that. Is there was another player that was super lengthy, who was impacting his team dramatically when he was on the floor, that was foul prone defensively a lot. That his main campaign for DPOY was leading the league in blocks. His block rate through the roof, absurd, insane, even though there were a lot of better positional defenders than him for the season that he played. And that's in Jaren Jackson. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. If I'm comparing Wemby to Jaren Jackson that year, Wemby would be better because his block rate is actually higher than Jaren Jackson's. And more importantly, what Wemby has done this year consistently with his help side, with his learned positioning throughout the year. Again, he's just provided so much value as really the only crazy positive defender on a tanking Spurs team. I think he should get the DPOI. I think he's that caliber. But I think what Rudy Gobert has done has just been miles ahead of pretty much everyone else in the league. And I think his impact on winning for Minnesota all the way through, which, by the way, this Minnesota team, a lot of people did not even have making the playoffs. Some people had them 5, 6 playing range. No one had them as a top 3 seed in the conference. Me and you did last year.
I was going to say, well, we did.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Because we know ball. That's why y'all come to us, we know ball, right?
Little pat in the back.
Right. So they were able to do that. And I kept saying over the summer with you, Derek, in those conversations, Gobert's going to have a bounce back season. And that's exactly what we're seeing this year. So I got Rudy Gobert personally, but I'm pointing out the Wemby Jaren thing because it bothers me.
I get it. It hurts as a Triple J stan, I guess. Not that many of them exist. It hurts to hear, but it's valid. I really can't push back on that. You didn't say anything wrong. Look, this was the most challenging award for me. Yeah. It really was. And really because other awards had, multiple candidates that had great seasons, etc. And that has, the same thing is true for here. But I think it's what I'm trying to piece together as far as reasons why deserved.
Right.
Because to me, there's 3 guys. There's 3 guys that have fantastic cases, but have the same kind of drawbacks, or I shouldn't say same drawbacks, but similar levels of drawback, I guess is what I'm going to say. Let's talk about Wemby first, right? Okay. Yeah. And again, maybe I'm thinking, I'm overthinking this because I'm looking in the grand scheme of NBA history. Wemby's going to get one of these, right? Yeah. It could very well be next year. He had the minutes restriction. We know what he was when he was on the floor. We know what he was when the Spurs did not have him on the floor. Having said that, you can't be a bottom tier defense at the end of the season and be a DPOY. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's going to happen. I know Wemby didn't really have much of a control as far as the minutes restriction, but that does impact. You know, you're talking about the block rate. I mean, the dude led the league in stocks. I think like
yes,
beyond anyone in second or third place, including the guys you named.
He had more blocks in a month than like 13 NBA teams.
Right. He was just doing extraordinary things. It's no secret that he's going to be. I shouldn't say no secret. To us, I think it's no secret he's all defensive first team.
Lock.
I'm terrified that there's a chance the media will not do that because they feel compelled to give it to, you know, someone who's been here before kind of thing.
Yeah.
Look, he's been sensational. He's going to win these. That's why I don't feel that bad not having him first. But again, the minutes restriction, the team was just too bad. And look, he wasn't exactly the most switchable guy in the world. Not that he should be, but I saw him have trouble, you know, on the perimeter. And I'm very much just nitpicking here, but that's just the truth of it. Now, there's two more guys, and these are proven all-NBA defenders. They've been here before. They're constantly in these conversations. They're the definition of anchors. And we have two differing opinions when it comes to Rudy Gobert. And it's not that I don't see him as you see him, as far as level of importance. Positional defense does matter more than blocks. Like, I don't push back on that at all. However, I do think you can out-scheme Gobert. And to me, the thing I'm struggling with the most, Gobert is leading the best defense in the league. Totally true. This is also the most help he's ever had.
Agreed.
And I'm not going to lie, you kind of undersold the rest of the T-Wolves cast when you brought it up.
Real quick, I just want to quickly emphasize what I meant by that. I was being sarcastic when I said a little. Obviously, this is a lot. I'm just saying.
No, I get it. I know you know. I know you know. But for the people out there, look, Anthony Edwards. Well, I mean, it's Kendrick Perkins, so let me chill. But yeah. Anthony Edwards is getting all NBA defense consideration.
So is B-Pod.
As well as B-Pod's top 10 defender. And look, Edwards has been sensational. Like a vastly improved defender. We talked about it last year. We saw glimpses, and I think there were stretches of like the season where he was really, really good. This year, he was just good the whole time. Not afraid of any assignment whatsoever. I think on and off ball, I'm no longer concerned in the slightest. I just think it's a matter of locking in, and if the team is helping enough offensively, he can stay engaged, because sometimes he has to work too hard offensively. Yeah. He can't have the same commitment defensively. That's the only drawback. Otherwise, Anthony Edwards is a phenomenal defender, start to finish. He's not the same. This guy isn't the same as he used to be because he's much older, but Mike Conley's still an incredibly high IQ defender. Great active hands, knows where to be, can at least be kind of, predictive as far as where a ball handler is going. He's not, Memphis Grizz, grit and grinds, Mike Conley, but still, I think, a plus. Like I said, mostly because of the IQ. But then you've got two guys that, one, I think, is making an all-defensive team, kind of got potentially screwed last year for not getting it. That's Jaden McDaniels. We know what he is.
Yeah, we do.
He is an absolute wrecking ball defensively, in consideration for best on-ball defender in the entire league. That's something Rudy Gobert is spoiled with. And then a guy that comes off the bench, I think, has been an underrated defender all year, is Kyle Anderson. So look, they've got a ton of help around Gobert. I know what he is, but at the end of the day, this guy is not going to get the award, and I think there's a very real chance he'll never get a DPOY.
I know who this is.
I have to give him the vote because, like his coach and like his team, they are not going to get the same historical respect they deserve. And I think he is still the best defender in the world, and that's Bam Adebayo.
Oh.
Bam Adebayo is my pick as DPOY.
Okay.
This was my hottest take. I know the numbers aren't all there to back me up. Rudy Gobert's got these. Victor's got these, right? They've got a stronger case from the stats perspective. From the team success perspective, Minnesota could have been number one in the West if not for like a couple like just bad luck drops. Like they're great, but I'm looking at the supporting cast and it's one of the weaker ones Bam has had in recent years. I'm looking at what Spo asked him to be this year, and it's not to be the most switchable big in the league. You had to actually be more of a defensive anchor. He asked Bam to be more of a rim guy this year. Yeah. So, like, the steals may not look the same from that perspective. Like, that number may have come down. We don't get too many examples of him, you know, switching out to guys and being, you know, absolute clamps this year. But that Heat team was so messy this year. We talk about the injuries, but they just don't have the same personnel. They had a bunch of young guys playing, and Bam was cleaning up their messes all over the place.
There was.
And, you know, he's going to be on Team USA. I think there's a very real shot he closes over the likes of Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid. I think there is a very real case. It's not to say that he's just straight up better than those two, but his ability to just take any defensive task and more often than not have some level of success. We just saw the play-in game. I get it. Joel's not 100%. I'm more than happy to say that. Obviously, I'd be inclined to one. Did a good job. It's not like Bam didn't have an impact on that production. I just think this guy is never going to walk away with the DPOY. I understand why that will happen, but he deserves a first place vote. And it was weird. I don't feel 100% great about it, but that's where I landed.
I'm surprised that the guy, because I was almost sure when you said this guy might not ever win a defensive player of his career. I thought you were going to talk about Anthony Davis, who's a bit closer to the end of his career than Bam would be.
Yeah, it's not that Bam's going to be retired. Like, I mean, the dude's, you know, only going to be 27 next year.
Yeah.
My problem is he's on the wrong side of the Jimmy Butler timeline, which is going to hurt Miami's contention status. And look, we get it. They're always in the hunt, but we just saw them lose the chance of the 7th seed. We don't even know if they can prevent a Kobe White masterclass part 2. They might just straight up miss the playoffs. So that will also impact long term. And like, you know, Jaime Jaquez has been fantastic, but is he really just going to pick up the mantle and keep these guys super relevant? I don't know. So it's not looking great for Bam as far as winning the award. Also, we just mentioned Wemby. I mean, the dude, him and Chet are going to be absolute problems for this moving forward. Oh, yeah. So I just think, man, like, when you just the phrase "go get me a stop," is Bam not the first guy to think of? I understand Anthony Davis is right there too. I think Bam's just a better perimeter defender, man. That's what it comes down to. AD is a bona fide anchor. Again, one of the best defenders the league has ever seen. But I think Bam just has the most complete circle as far as what you need defensively. And yeah, I don't think he'll get it, but that's where my first place vote is.
Yeah, Bam was definitely a part of my top 3. I had Gobert, Wemby, and Bam. Anthony Davis, I wanted to put him higher, but the Laker defense just hasn't been high enough for the award. And also, for whatever reason, the numbers for the Lakers defensively are worse when he's on the floor, which is so weird. I've gone back, I've watched games, like, they give up a bit more corner threes, but it's like, it's weird because it's like, I know the numbers are lying to me in that sense, but I still think when you look at Bam's case in terms of what he's had to carry this season in terms of all the injuries.
Well, a top 5 defense, by the way. That's another thing that I like.
Top 5 that matters. And it's like, yeah, that matters for me too. So I'm 100% with you there, Derek.
Yeah, no, I think we're in agreement. And look, I've got, you're not wrong. I think honestly, that's what I'm hoping the NBA kind of reaches agreement on. I think the voters will see that. I think Gobert's got such a strong case. Wemby is truly a year away from hoisting this himself. But yeah, no, I think Bam needs the love. I'll take it. Even if it's in podcast form, at least he's going to get something.
Well, big shout out to Bam. We now transition from one blockbuster award to another.
Yeah.
And that is the MVP of the league, man. Oh.
This is rough. This is
hard for me. I'm not going to lie to you. I spent a lot of time going back and forth on this. Now quickly, I want to say this about the MVP. This is my personal opinion. Derek does not have to agree. This is me. I personally am one of the people that believes that if Joel Embiid had got more time to play in the season, based off how he was playing, if there wasn't some crazy cool off and the impact that we saw his team go through without him on the floor alone, I think this award would be Joel Embiid's award. I think he would be a back-to-back MVP guy, even though I am in the camp that believes that Jokic deserved it over Embiid last year. I think when Embiid was playing, I think he was the best player in basketball for the regular season, in my opinion. Obviously, he got hurt, so he's no longer eligible for the award. And from there, we are left to our own device to pick up the pieces. And I'm going to lay out my top three. Derek, I just want to see if you agree with the top three. My top three came down to Jokic, Luka, and Shea.
Yeah, we agree. To me, this has been a 3-horse race for really the whole season.
Okay. I think it's better if we just discuss the cases together and then choose who we have at the end. I want to begin with Shea. Shea has been one of the most consistent players in the NBA. And I know that sounds like some easy thing to say, but this is a player that averaged like 31 roughly, or maybe 30 points roughly. And it's like, I know we've seen guys do that before, right? Like we've seen multiple guys average 30.
There's another candidate here did that.
Right. But the funny part about Shea is that he's had 50 plus games of 30 points.
Right.
And like I've been saying this for like the whole season, all averages are not created equal. There's a difference between averaging 34 a series where game 1 you drop 60, game 2 you have 12, game 3 you have 45, game 4 you have 22, right? And then so on and so forth. All in all, you wind up averaging 30. It's different when it's 30, 30, 30, 30. And for Shea, for a lot of the season, that's been him. He's also been a positive defender for the entire season. And more importantly, for this Oklahoma City team, a lot of people thought that OKC would be good. But a lot of people also said that they were too young, the size. They weren't sure if they would be able to really reach their potential. A lot of people had them in the 5 to 6 range. They are the number 1 seed in the NBA. A lot of people, as good as they might have thought OKC was, no one, for the most part, had Oklahoma City as the number 1 seeded team in the association. And a lot of that is because of how good Shea is, still leading the league in drives. His efficiency in isolation has been insane as well. So Shea, to me, that would be his argument for winning the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, we completely agree. And look, I guess I'm going to jump ahead and say, for all three of these guys, it's a case of what else should they have done to not outright win, right? Because for Shea, he's got a complete case. You know, you already said it, offensively, defensively, positive defender, leading the league in steals. We've seen, you know, I get it, some people like don't really, you know, value steals like that. We've seen, you know, not so great defenders lead the league before, but there's been guys that have led the league in steals while obviously being offensively, you know, beyond gifted, no pun intended, that have won the award. Allen Iverson led the league in steals when he won his MVP. Steph Curry, for his MVP, led the league in steals. I don't think it's crazy to say Shea's better than both of them defensively. He just so happens to also do that. So you mentioned you got the positive defense on a very good defensive team, and I think he's a part of it. But then he's clearly the offensive engine.
Yes.
You know, take the 30 away, he is the main table setter Like, I understand J-Dub, fantastic. Giddy, it's one of the few positives he has. The team, has a healthy amount of passing, but SGA sets it up for everybody. So he's got crazy production on his side. He's got the number 1 seed on his side. He's got the surprise on his side. Now, I feel pretty damn good because I said they were a top 3 seed this year. I expected them to be jumping out on teams. I didn't have them as 1, though. I didn't have them as 1, and I didn't have them having such a firm grasp on both ends of the floor and looking like such a complete team. So here's the problem. What can SGA do more? Like, what else could he do differently that wouldn't just have him as the winner? That's kind of what I've been trying to think about, because my spoiler is I've got the other 2 guys ahead of him.
I do too.
And I feel for SGA fans. I know he's going to get a few first place votes. I don't know that he's going to win it, but I'm stuck. I don't know what else I could ask of him. He's got the team success. He's got the surprise factor. He's got the production. He's got the numbers. I don't know what I could say.
He literally has everything that you would want. I think the sad reality of your answer, and this is going to be very divisive, the only thing that's left is to just be a better player than the other 2 guys.
Right.
And I just feel like as good as Shea has been this season, as much as we acknowledge his greatness, I think the other 2 guys are just flat out better basketball players. And that's what makes it like a tough conversation. Because I mean, shoot, if we translate if we transition from Shea to the next candidates, I mean, let's start with Jokic. I mean, this guy routinely continues to be one of the best regular season players I've ever seen in my life. And more importantly, Derek, this is his case to probably win, by the way. He's played 79 games this season.
Yep.
Like the amount of availability on Jokic, where he's been a consistent rock playing through everything. Trust me, as someone who played fantasy basketball this season, you heard me many times bringing him up. Like he's just Mr. Reliable on a night in, night out basis. And more importantly, like the way that he's engineered that Denver offense to where it just runs so fluidly and so perfectly. He is the definition of impact on winning, and he's been present all the time. He's super efficient in the paint. One of the best touched guys we've ever seen touch the NBA. The passes are still crazy. When they blitz him, he knows what to do. And the way he can just control a game and the pace of the game routinely from start to finish, how he's a triple-double machine, the VORP. Like, there's just so many things you can point to with Jokic, and he gives you all of that in 79 games of play. And this is not like your casual, regular Denver Nuggets season. Jamal Murray has been compromised for like the last 2 months, and he's just been consistent, and they've still won games and no one's cared. And they've been like a top 3 seed from the beginning of the season all the way to the end, fighting with OKC, fighting with that Minnesota team all the way to the end. And he's been a big part of why they've been so far removed from these other conversations. He's just been spectacular this season. And I feel like, you know, he's largely in this conversation because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, to oversimplify Jokic's case, best player wins most valuable. Yeah, you know, that like Jokic has, I think, maybe not the strongest grip in the world on best player on the planet, but I think most people would probably say that at this point, that he's just the best player in the league. Yeah. And he has played like it. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. You mentioned Denver. You know, we know what they turn into when he's not there. And for a championship team, you'd expect it to be a little bit better than what it is. But Jokic does make that team go. You know, I forget who I was talking to about it the other day. I said that, like, Boston is a machine, and the Nuggets, you know, these are the 2 teams we think are going to be in the finals. Boston's a machine, the Nuggets are an organism. Yeah. And if the Nuggets are an organism, then yeah, I think Jokic is the mitochondria. You know, it's the running bit of the powerhouse of the cell.
Powerhouse of the cell, yep.
I mean, he is. Like, you mentioned the consistency. You know, he's got obviously the most games played on his side compared to SGA's at 75, Luka's at 70. You know, I don't really think to me, that's not like what changes it. It's just, again, what could Jokic do differently? Like, what else does he need to do? Because as much as we could say, well, he didn't average 30, he averaged 27. Like,
he almost averaged a triple-double as an offensive powerhouse guy who's making great decisions 9 times out of 10.
Right. Still won the league leaders in rebounding. You mentioned the passing. Like, he does enough. He does enough too well at everything. And he's got the record on his side, which I think brings us to our third guy.
Man,
the one thing holding him back is probably record by comparison to these other two candidates. But statistically, Luka Doncic is almost in a league of his own.
I'm down to say it. I think statistically, you can argue he's been the best player of any of these guys. And I mean, in terms of his ability to just walk out there on the floor and give you 30, 12, and 9 consistently. He's averaging 33 points. And more importantly, he's the best isolation player in the league. I know that Shea has a higher points per possession, but the volume difference between Luka and Shea is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. So by that caveat, he's still the best isolation player in the NBA. Just his herky jerkiness, no one knows how to guard. Like, there's literally just no answer for the avalanche and the onslaught that Luka is. And again, if we're talking about like offensive peaks and whatnot, I mean, this man scored 73 points this year versus the Atlanta Hawks. Like, he literally tortured that basketball team. And then down the stretch in must-win games, Luka is performing night in, night out. That Denver game, shout out to Kyrie, that's a humongous game winner. Luka balled in that game. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like this undeniable wave that's coming your way of just sheer offensive greatness. And he's shown this portfolio for multiple years, but for him to put it together on a team where, if we're going to mention record, we also have to mention cast that got the record. This cast of players for the majority of the season has largely been inconsistent in terms of spacing and defense. Like, those have been their two areas that haven't been consistent. They upgraded those pieces at the trade deadline, and you saw Luka's play get even better once you gave him two other big athletes who can jump and dunk the basketball. So, I mean, I'm looking at that and it's like, wow, like, what else could he have done beyond maybe go up one more seed? Because, I mean, I think if Luka's a top 4 seed, he probably has this award, and he's 5.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if they had Gafford and PJ Washington, or at least players like those two. Right. And like, I get he's got Kyrie, but a lot of these other pieces, I mean,
Tim Hardaway Jr., Dante Exum.
Like, yeah, Dante was unemployed from the NBA legitimately for some time. And look, like, he's carved out a pretty nice season. It's not meant to be a shot, but like, you've got a championship roster in Denver, and I get it. Not necessarily the same, you know, like Bruce Brown's not there anymore, but like, they're still really good. KCP's fantastic. MPJ's been great.
Bro,
Aaron
Dallas
Gordon is
murder someone to have KCP. I think truly
they'd murder thousands for any one of those players I just named.
Yeah.
If you give Luka one of those starters, it's disgusting.
Luka with Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, right. Like, he turns. There's no drop off at all for any of those players going from Jokic to Doncic. Luka's been the one-man army. I think more personified than anyone else. I'll say it, more than anyone in NBA history. That goes for LeBron. I think LeBron has been more of a cog than Luka in this, sense of Doncic can make every single decision for an entire offensive game, and you're going to win more often than not. You can get 50 wins with one man deciding how an offense goes.
There's only one player in NBA history in this conversation that I think stacks a bit higher than Luka. And I mean, I've heard people say he's not better than Luka, which is fine. But like at the peak of his powers, James Harden, where literally every possession is Harden. Like they play a similar style.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh man, it's crazy.
That's fair. You know, that's fair. That's fair. And, you know, maybe it's a little too hyperbole. Even if you disagree with Luka being the best at it,
he's still that caliber of player, regardless.
He's still in the peak of that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, everyone else is a bona fide Hall of Famer that's mentioned there. So I just don't think it's crazy to say he's been so stinking good. I've used that phrase too many times, but that's just the truth. He's done so much. We talked about how bad they were defensively pre-trade deadline. I think with some help too, he's looked a little bit better. Like the fouls are lower for Luka. I know he's still the weakest defender out of these three, but he's done enough for me to be like, okay, that's not like, you know, a fatal flaw in your argument. We've seen worse defenders win this award before, so I can't take that away from him. And you said it, if he had the help or if he was even one seed higher, because 4 and 5 just seems like the biggest difference to some voters, he might just be walking away with this award. He's been outstanding. I get it. He's been in this conversation for 3 or 4 years straight now as like, you know, a favorite. But he's deserved it. He's deserved being in these conversations, and he's only gotten better. And it just makes you wonder, like, have we even seen his ceiling? Because I don't know that we even have.
And it's wild because we asked what could these players done better. Luka came in shooting the best he's ever shot from 3. Right? Like we're just seeing him.
The most minutes he's ever played.
Yeah. He's played 70 games this year.
And nearly 38 minutes a night. Like, kid doesn't trust, and probably rightfully so, like having this team, you know, function without him. And again, that's not even meant to be like a guy like Kyrie, who's been really good. Like there's a reason why he got 50 wins, but Doncic is just the engine, the personification of an engine.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I think we do agree with our placements though. I've got Jokic at 1. I've got Doncic at 2. I've got SGA at 3.
Oh man, yeah. I really struggle with the Luka thing, man, because I struggle with it so much because of the offensive like reliance on Luka for the entire season and how dominant he's been in isolation. Like this has been one of the best offensive seasons ever, right? Like that's what he's done this year. But with Jokic, it's like the way that he dominates the game in different ways. And also the fact that, again, I know people might not think 9 games is a big difference, but the fact that he's played 79, like that's almost 82. He's 3 away from 82.
Right.
In this modern era of basketball where it goes up and down the court. And I know, right? Like he's a big, there's everything, but he's still taking physicality at the big man position. He still has all these blood scars on his arms when he's going up and down the floor.
Dude wrestles a bear every night is what it looks like. He walks out with these insane cuts. It's just like, what?
And he played 79 games of that. And I just feel like for me, I got to value that. So I still go Jokic 1, man. And I go Luka 2. So I would agree with you there. Those are our MVP picks. If you want to yell at us and tell us why we're wrong, why Jason Tatum should be in these talks, I mean, feel free.
Stop. I don't care.
What you mean?
No.
He won the most games in the
No. This is like, man. Boston fans ought to be grateful that someone even suggested that he's in it.
Yeah, no.
I don't even know if he's in my top 5. I'll say it. I don't even know if he's in my top 5.
Oh man, brother.
Look, team's fantastic. We'll talk about all NBA teams.
We will.
But Tatum ain't in the MVP, man. Sorry.
Hey,
kick rocks. Enjoy your record.
Derek said, I'm going to clip out this part to make all the Boston fans on Twitter mad. Hello, Boston fans.
As you should. Yeah, dude. I don't care. Look, you got the best team in the league. Congratulations. You do not have anywhere close to the best player. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Well said. Well said. Well, we will now transition to the other big NBA player accolade, Clutch Player of the Year. This is a new award that has been added to the NBA. It is the second year of its existence. Last year, De'Aaron Fox won the award. Clutch Player of the Year. So I know Derek might not have been fond of this award. I can't wait to hear your perspective on that. But in my opinion, for Clutch Player of the Year, again, it's specifically targeting the area where players performing in the clutch. The clutch is pretty much like the last 5 minutes of a game where the score is very close. I'm pretty sure within 5 or 10 points, and you have to
I think it's 5 points within 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 points within 5 minutes, basically. So Clutch Player of the Year encompasses playing that. Now, what I don't want this award to become, even though it will become this, and I get why, I don't want it to become who scored the most in this stretch. That's your clutch player, because there's several different definitions of clutch. I know the go-to thing is this guy hit all the shots in the clutch, he's Clutch Player of the Year, but also decision making in the clutch, right?
Bingo.
Defense in the clutch, rebounding, like I think these things matter, right? I do. But with all that being said, I'll give you my number one player. My number one player in the clutch this season is Stephen Curry. Now, I understand. Gifted, of course you chose Stephen Curry. You're a Warriors fan. And like I really sat here. I really thought about it. I've been tracking this race the entire time. There is a video on the channel. It might have been my last video that I uploaded, which is crazy. But I was tracking the Clutch Player of the Year. And I feel like when you look at this, Derek, and you look at the stats and the data, specifically in the clutch area, I really think like what Steph Curry has done this year has been absolutely ridiculous from any player in this clutch time period. Specifically for Stephen Curry. I'm currently re-pulling up the stats here because it's really insane here. Specifically, when you go to clutch time here's what Steph Curry is doing in the clutch. Are you ready, Derek?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so this is his totals for the season. I just want to make sure I had this right. So yeah, Steph Curry has played 142 clutch minutes on the season. He is
Sorry, don't mean to laugh. Just,
yeah,
it's funny because,
yes.
Why are the Warriors always in so many of those situations?
Because we're not a good team. That is why. But like, well, okay. Technically, we were above 500, but you get my point. In the Western Conference,
right.
Yeah. But anyway, he scored 189 points in the clutch this season for the Warriors. That is number one in the association, and number two after him would be DeMar DeRozan, who, by the way, has played 191 minutes. So let's focus on that, right? DeMar, who's number two, has played 191 minutes in the clutch. Steph has played 142 and still has more points than DeMar DeRozan in the clutch, even though it's that much of a margin in terms of clutch overall minutes. When you zoom out from that and you go to field goals made, Steph Curry's number one in field goals made. He shot 59 for 119. So he's shooting 49% on 59 made shots in the clutch. Again, the second player after him is once again DeMar DeRozan, who's made 55 of 113 shots. Also, there's another stat that shows you the team clutch percentage, which means how many points are you responsible for? Like, what's the percentage of that, of your team's overall percentage? DeMar, I believe, was at 34%. Steph Curry was responsible for 47% of his team scoring in the clutch this year. So those are the metrics. Also, 3-pointers made. He's shooting 32 of 70 from three in the clutch. That's 45.7% in the clutch. Also 95% free throw. So he's quite literally shooting basically 50, 40, 90. He's technically shooting 49.6, but I mean, we know what that is. That's what Steph Curry was this year in the clutch. I obviously, as a Warriors fan, watched pretty much every game, and it got to a point where like we were calling him a clutch merchant. Like, you only want to hoop when the game is close, because he would struggle for the first like 3/4 of the game. Sometimes it wouldn't always be his fault. Sometimes he was just trying to get his teammates involved, but it felt like when it came down to the clutch, he was just a different man this season. So for me, I got Steph, but my other candidates that I have DeMar DeRozan, and I also have Nikola Jokic. Those are my three players for clutch player of the year. What's your perspective on the award, and who do you have, Derek?
Okay, well, you made a great argument, and I'll just go with you on that because, quite frankly, I'm of the opinion this is a silly ass award. This is very unserious. Look, how you measure clutch, and I understand we have a definition, but to your point, this is just running into a very similar issue as of six man. It's like, okay, raw production of points in the clutch. Yeah. That makes sense. That sounds like that should be the clutch person. And that's fine. I just think at the end of the day, what do I care about? As a basketball coach, as someone who just take competition. You're not even a basketball fan. You just like sports. You just like winning. That's why the clutch matters. Are you winning? So to me, what matters the most, if we're going to do this award, is who is the best decision maker in the end of games that leads to winning.
I hear that.
And you know what? Because I just pissed off Boston fans by telling them Tatum isn't even sniffing MVP votes. I'm going to give a shout out to a Celtic that I think has been the best closer for the best team this season. Derek White, congratulations. You're clutch player of the year from me. Because when I think of clutch, when I think of reliability, when I think about winning, Derek White is the player that comes to mind. He is getting me stops. He is making smart passes. He is making clutch shots. That's what I need out of every single good basketball player. That's what you want. When the going gets tough, and we all know it, Boston fans deep down, you know this to be true. When your team gets scared and clutch, and you know the 5-out ain't working because it finally got countered, you're not getting the same stops, and everyone starts looking at each other, and you know Tatum don't got the answer. Derek White gets the ball. Derek White grabs the ball and says, it's okay. We're going to come out of this. And he got 64 wins this year. That's why the player, to me, every clutch player of the year should just be on the team that has the most wins. Find the best player, the smartest decision maker on the best team for a given season. That's how I would handle this award. Ultimately, I think it's silly as hell because how the heck are we actually measuring this? Gifted, you made a great case for Steph. I'm not even going to push back on it. I hear that. But to me, it comes down to, are you winning these games? Are you a great decision maker? Does every other team want this said player? And I'm not saying they don't want Steph, obviously, but I'll go with Derek White, a guy who had an all-star case going for him for a little while, one of the most unheralded, great players in the league. Derek White, congratulations, you're my clutch player of the year.
Yeah, this was not this is not an argument that I was prepared for Derek to make in any way. And again, I understand why you don't like the way it sounds, because again, I don't want this award to just come down to who has the most clutch stats. Like, I think it's deeper than just how many points you score in the clutch. But for me, at least, and maybe this is a bit of Warriors bias from watching the games, but I also think in clutch player of the year, I more so look at, okay, when it comes down to it, how much are you contributing to your team winning or losing these ball games? How much of an impact player are you in these moments? How much of your team's offense or defense relies upon what you are putting forth? And to your point about Derek White, I think the entire season he's been a very consistent player for Boston. I literally remember the Golden State game, which is ironic because down the stretch, Derek White was making crazy 3 after 3 after 3, and he was going band for band with Steph Curry down the stretch. He won that game. But, you know, these are things that I have noticed. I feel like with Steph specifically, the reason why I lean Steph is last year, Fox won it. And a lot of that to me was whenever the rubber had to meet the road, Fox was the guy for the Kings that made sure it met the road. He felt like he turned into a completely different player in the clutch, multiple game winners, multiple big shots, win, lose, or draw. And I feel like with Steph, it's been that same thing, except he's on a much worse supporting cast. Teams throw a lot at him this season based on that cast. His decision making, all that before the fourth quarter comes into question. But I feel like whenever that fourth quarter hit, I knew exactly what type of player I was going to get. And again, for me, it's just the overall efficiency. I mean, again, for you to play, I can't get this right, but yeah, for you to literally play 142 minutes and lead the NBA in clutch points when DeMar DeRozan, who's right after you, is at 191 and he doesn't have more points or threes than you. I think the level of efficiency and output from a scoring perspective is why I would lean Steph. But again, it's a weird thing. It's a new award that doesn't really have a lot of sample size yet on it, but that's at least my take on it.
And I like that, Gifted. I hear that. I think what I find interesting, and maybe just I'm a grump because I feel like this award just sounds like something out of a rec league, not the NBA.
I hear that.
But what I'm thinking, from this perspective, and you mentioned Steph, and we've talked about the Warriors. They didn't really meet the expectations most of us had for them this year. You mentioned De'Aaron Fox and the Kings, and I'm thinking, okay, these are great players on okay or good teams, and why is it that they have to come up big? And I'm thinking, and no, I'm not even thinking, I know it's because they haven't executed prior to that, right? To your point, in the Steph Curry comments that you had, it's because, so whether it was Steph himself or the team failed to execute properly, puts them in these positions to have to come up big in the clutch. So I respect that they do come up big for their teams. Obviously, that's a skill, that's a trait that's very important. But I'm looking at a guy and a team that executes properly and doesn't put themselves in as many positions where they have to come up clutch. Boston had... This is probably my favorite stat of the year, potentially.
Oh,
Boston had more 30-point leads this season than 10-point deficits.
Crazy.
Do you know how hard that is to do?
Yeah, no, that's wild.
So, again, and it's not that Derek White's actually the best player on the team. No, I'm not that silly. But to me, he was the most consistent, good decision maker. He's the closest thing to the actual coach on the floor. And that's a damn good coach, as we talked about. That's a damn good decision maker. That's a damn good team. That's what matters to me. Your ability to execute in those situations and execute the entire time for success. That is, to me, the definition of clutch. You can be clutch in all 4 quarters. I don't think clutch just refers to the last 5 minutes of the fourth, because I hate to say it, and this goes off on a whole tangent that we don't really have time for, but the argument that is always made by someone who doesn't really like basketball or doesn't really watch the NBA, well, why do I have to watch quarters 1 through 3? I could just watch the fourth quarter, which I think is such a terrible way to look at the sport and such a terrible way to look at any product. But to me, you can be clutch throughout the entire game. And I think a team like the Boston Celtics is a perfect example of that. I think Derek White is the prime example of that kind of player. So totally hear your argument. It's a very sound argument. It's a good argument. Probably is the guy who actually should get the award this year. Judging from what I've heard of the rumblings of this award. I'll tell you what, I like my definition. And I feel like, you know what? Boston isn't going to get a ton of awards individually this year. This can be their chance at it.
And I just want to be clear. I agree with your overall definition of the award. And I feel like the other player that embodies that to a T for me would be Jokic.
Sure, totally.
Like the execution from this guy in the fourth quarters, even in those exact moments, like a prime example, right? The Lakers game where they're walking them down the same way every time is because Jokic's decision making is so crisp, right? Even if you look at the two Boston matchups, which were close games, by the way, Jokic's decision making to dice up their great defense for the entire game was a big part of why they won. His shot making, his efficiency in those moments. Again, that's why I would put Jokic in that conversation as well by definition.
Totally gifted. I'll tell you, the only reason he's not my overall pick is because I'm, maybe dumbing this down or I'm making this more simplistic. I'm taking it from the best team for the given season, the most wins, right? Yeah. That's why I'm giving Boston and Derek White the shine. You're totally right, though, because, the reason why I end up loving Jokic the most is because, to me, he just doesn't make wrong decisions.
He doesn't, no.
Every possession, every play, to me, is just a calculated thought that... it sounds so simplistic, but more often than not,
it works.
Really is just the right decision every time. So totally, and he's obviously the better player, so like that's where it should go. But I'm just like, let me give a shine to the team that won the most. Right.
So hey, I have no problem with that. Again, this is only the second year of the award. I feel like it's gonna have to be a season where this comes to a test. In terms of evaluating other places. Again, I would hate for this award just to come down to who scores the most in the clutch. I feel like that's kind of redundant. But even me saying that, I feel like the degree to which Steph was able to score in the clutch,
for sure,
not even counting like the impact on the game in terms of bringing the team back when they had no offense or what his off ball was doing to teams in the fourth quarters, but just from a sheer scoring perspective with efficiency in the clutch, I think it put him miles ahead of everyone else in the conversation, even with the minutes. So that was my logic, but we'll see where this grows from this season. Again, it's only been a 2-year sample size so far, but yeah, this has been a 2-hour and 8-minute recording. So fun times. We really discuss all these awards in depth. This kind of makes me scared for all NBA teams now. I'm very grateful that we chose to do that in another recording, but that'll be coming to y'all at a later time. Always great discussing NBA basketball with my guy Derek. And again, we'll be watching a ton of these games on playback. If you want to come through, talk some hoops and watch some hoops with us, go tap in. Again, link will be in the description. To the host of Not Just Dribble, make sure to go follow Derek Stein on all platforms. Derek, feel free to let the people know where they can find you, man.
Thank you. Yes, we will be watching playoff basketball, and appreciate being here, Gifted, even putting up with my technical difficulties sprinkled throughout. Great conversation. We were absolutely nuts to think that we could even potentially squeeze in another segment. If you made it this far, you're a trooper. You're a real one. And follow us both. Yeah, you can find me at Derek R. Stein on Twitter. Refuse it to call the app by its actual name. Look, it's pretty savvy basketball takes. I need to be like tweeting more often about just general stuff. I feel like I'm in a bunch of chats, and that's how I kind of get like my takes and conversation off. But needs to be more publicized, in the major forum. And we are getting back to posting on the Not Just Dribble channel. It's been far too long. I gotta source it. Gotta source these takes. And some of them aren't half bad, I don't think. So yeah, appreciate listening. Appreciate the follow. Let's have a dialogue. Gifted, appreciate being here, man. Always good to talk shop and talk hoops.
Absolutely. And to people who made it this far, I might as well explain. I've been gone. I'm not gonna lie. I've been doing a lot of work. I'm also taking classes as well. So I got class,
everywhere,
I got
man.
work, and I'm trying to watch basketball games. And I'm with another organization doing even more work around basketball, and I'm streaming games. So haven't really found the time to be as active on YouTube as I would like. But I will say this: once the season ends, which is so backwards, by the way, how I can make more content about the NBA when there's no basketball. when there is basketball, I kind of float, but that will be the situation. I will be relaunching my series I did last year, where I go through all 30 teams in the NBA and I recap their seasons and project what's going to happen. I'll probably wait a little bit longer after the end of this upcoming regular season, but I'm going to try to be as active as possible during the playoffs. This is a very important time. We have a lot of legacies made to be elevated or shattered. Derek, as a Sixers fan, has the most realistic shot to make it to a conference finals from a lot of years, which is really saying something. So
for real,
it should be fun to watch. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, go tap into Not the Dribble podcast. Derek's links and all that will be in the comment section below. We appreciate y'all, and we'll catch you for another episode where we dive into the all NBA and all defensive teams. Peace out. Y'all have a good one. And remember, watch basketball. We're officially at the end of the regular season. It's enough narratives going around. Peace. Have a good one, people.
Peace.